We are approaching one of the biggest decisions this country will face in our lifetimes.
I think immigration in this country is a big problem.
The right wing was very, very crafty in selling a falsehood to the nation.
We get labelled as Nazis and all that, which I just think is a joke.
Nobody sat down to fact check. They just painted the buses red and said, look, if we leave Europe, we get £350 million a week.
The British people have voted to leave the European Union, and their will must be respected.
I said that I wanted to lead a campaign to get Britain to leave the European Union. You all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you?
I don't trust none of them. 2.5 years down the line and nothing's been sorted out.
That has been our one red line, that we cannot have either a customs border down the Irish Sea or a regulatory border, because that would make us separate from the rest of the United Kingdom.
There has been an attitude in the past. Ireland, pull the plug, let it sink.
She is a unionist. She believes in the union of the four.
Migrants to Britain are either a problem or a threat.
So with the UK, we're continuing our trade.
202, the nose order. The eyes to the right, 202. The nose to the left, 432. So the noes have it, the noes have it. Unlock!
Democracy is we leave on the 29th, which was Friday. We haven't left. I would leave with a no deal. That's what I would do, and a lot of other people would as well.
Are all part of Drummonteague and Joker Parish. It meant that we were divided to destroy all that and bring us back to the days when this was an economic wasteland for people trying to interact with their neighbours on the other side of the border. A border that we never really recognised, and we have no intentions of ever going back to recognise it again.
Did the average voter consider the border issue with Northern Ireland? I doubt whether it even came up. I can only say for myself, it never occurred to me.
I remember so distinctly from the first referendum campaign, Northern Ireland was not mentioned, which seems absolutely insane now because it's become the absolute clincher of an issue for the whole debate. It is the problem. There is no solution to the Northern Irish problem. There is no solution unless we are in Europe.
There's a joke in Northern Ireland which is, welcome to Belfast, please turn back your watches 400 years. People take their history or how they understand their history very seriously because they think big historical issues are at stake.
Having grown up in the 70s and 80s and having to stop at a border, my father at one point, we came to a checkpoint and my father driven forward too far. And the guy lifted the gun up and said, "Get back, I told you to get back now." My mother screaming, "Terence, reverse the car back up, do what you're told, do what you're told." At that point, these guys were getting shot and killed every day. I remember that, and I certainly don't want to see that again.
Northern Ireland was created actually in 1920. It was the response to a conflict that was going on in Ireland at that time about whether Ireland should be independent or whether it should belong to Britain. And the majority in this part of the island was very, very determined that it should remain with Britain. And so a border was drawn in the middle of Ireland at that time, and Northern Ireland remained in the United Kingdom with a Protestant or Unionist or British, and they're much the same majority, but with quite a substantial minority who felt that they had somehow lost.
I'll tell you the easiest solution. Why you just become part of Ireland. Or the other way you could look at it is, why doesn't Ireland just become part of the UK again? Now there's the real fight that would start. Would that would solve all the problems? I'm being funny there, I'm tongue-in-cheek, absolutely no chance. They should probably have never split it in the first place, that's what the problem was, but let's do a long history book. I mean, how far back do you want to go?
In Northern Ireland, history is part of the story of now. The struggles that are going on now reflect struggles which have a long, long roots. Some people will say, well, it goes back to the first time the English came to Ireland 800 years ago. Other people will say the arrival of the Protestants and of the division in religion and the plantation of Ulster, which was 400 years ago, they'll say it's 400 years of conflict. Other people will say the violence we're only interested in is the recent violence, so they talk about the troubles or the conflict of the last 50 years.
Northern Ireland was forcibly set up after the successful rebellion in Ireland. The Prime Minister at the time said, now we have a Protestant state for a Protestant people. Protestant people, their school educations were funded through the state. Catholic schools had to be funded by the local people themselves. There was a gerrymandering. To have a vote, you needed to own a house. To own a house, you needed to have a job. The Catholics didn't get jobs or got the most menial jobs. It was so horribly set up. And when people are put down physically, economically, religiously, culturally, it's only a matter of time before people rise up.
The Troubles is a word given to the violence that broke out in Northern Ireland in 1969. A conflict which for some people was seen as a kind of a war, but for other people was seen as almost just criminal terrorism. And so the word that came up was an old word in Ireland, which was, these are times of trouble. The immediate cause was a dispute which emerged when Catholics started to demand equal civil rights, actually modelled on the United States.
The campaign wasn't about reuniting Ireland, it was about conditions, it was about equality, it was about civil rights. The police at the time, which was the RUC, the Royal Ulster Constabulary, under orders from the Northern Ireland government, forcefully beat people off the streets who were getting slaughtered by the RUC and the B specials. People then reacted. There were no weapons and firearms. Well, people used Molotov cocktails, broken paving stones, anything they could get.
And when the police lost control, the army was brought in, and when the army was brought in, the IRA emerged. And so we went from a period when people thought this was just about demonstrations on the street to an actual full-scale confrontation involving large amounts of violence with people being killed every day.
spread everywhere. Then the pro-British, the loyalist, unionist community, Protestant community, they rose up and they started to attack Catholic houses, Catholic areas. Areas like where I live, people, they put families out of their homes. And it was the biggest population shift through conflict since the Second World War. There was something like 200,000 people were put out of their homes in Belfast. We were living in a war zone. We had tanks on the streets in the communities. We had bombs going off in the towns. We had communities being attacked. We had people being killed daily. So there were people who took up arms to protect their communities. People who had agreed with the IRA strategy. You had to be proactive in a military campaign. And the only way it will end is when Britain leaves Ireland completely.
The reason I don't want to be seen on camera, and obviously hopefully my voice a bit deterred as well, is because people don't forget the past here. People could recognise me from maybe something that happened 20 years ago, and I would be feeling then I'm putting my own life at risk, my family's life at risk, and actually where I live. This is the Shankill Road here, guys. This here now is 100% Protestant. This area, guys, is still controlled by a group called the UEFF, the Ulster Freedom Fighters. And you can see they're just normal neighbourhoods. These are just normal working class people in here, guys. But they form these groups here to protect themselves from attacks from the IRA. These guys here, where I belong myself, we have always said we will never live under an Irish government, and we certainly would live under an Irish flag. When you grow up here, your homes are being attacked. The IRA were shooting people on the street here. So it's very easy to get involved when you see your neighbours and your friends being killed. Personally, I have family members killed here, so we joined these groups to take the war back till the IRA. Remember, guys, in these areas here, these are heroes of their own side of the community. One man's freedom fighter is the other man's terrorist.
In early 1973, the conflict was going very, very heavy at the time. The Northern Ireland authorities with the British government introduced a thing called internment, which meant people could have been arrested and just put in prison. And I was interned for no trial, no judge, no court appearance, nothing whatsoever. I was 17 at the time. There was bad tortures, there was bad beatings. I was hospitalised for 11 days with a broken jaw, 2 broken ribs, damaged eye socket. It was really quite scary. Almost like if you're watching army war camps in the Second World War and the old movies. And I got out when I was just coming 21.
This is the old Crumlin Road prison here, guys, by the way, where you've seen it. While we were in there, we were treated as political prisoners. You had your own clothes, you had everything you wanted, guys. You had even full control of the prison. As you can see on the wall, we kept a wire fence around the old tin huts. So the prison guards stayed on the outside, the British Army stayed in the watchtowers. While we were in there, we had full control of the prison. I was sentenced to 17 years, 8 years, 6 years and 3 years, but they run concurrent. But halfway through my sentence, they brought in what they call the half remission, and you do half of your biggest sentence. So I was lucky enough only to serve 4 years. You know, guys, as soon as I came out, I went straight back into my old ways. When I came out of jail in 1979, the war was still at its peak here, so you automatically just fall back into your old ways. Remember, guys, when you're in them prisons, you're being trained every day. It's ingrained into you this war's going on. They train you in weapons, they train you how to make explosives. So when you came out, I often said, guys, we were better trained coming out than we were getting in. Well, obviously no one ever wanted to hurt an innocent person. There's no doubt about it. We did not want to kill civilians. But unfortunately, guys, you put a car bomb in someone's neighbourhood, you cannot pick your target. That was always a sad thing.
The whole city became structured by violence. You know, the street patterns where people lived, where people felt safe going, what people felt safe talking about, and that went on for such a long time. So it impacted on the psyche, it impacted on people growing up and just what everyday normality.
One memory is bomb scares. You would just be told that there was potential threat of a bomb, and you had to wait and not go to your car and stay around. But again, child's perspective, so I was about 6. I remember in a local shopping centre, we couldn't go and drive home, so the shopping centre brought out free drinks and snacks, and we thought this was excellent, while they merrily exploded someone's car underneath.
My dad was an ex-British soldier and an ex-police officer here. Well, they used to call them the B Specials. The Reserve Police Corps was a very strong, obviously, crossing organisation.
How old were you when your father was shot?
16 years old. Makes you very bitter, guys. Makes you very angry. And my mum, unfortunately, guys, had a mental breakdown after, and she spent nearly 20 years inside a mental institution. She could not cope with losing her husband and my dad.
War is horrific in any sense. Armed conflict is horrific in any sense. So there seemed to be a moral basis or codes that people wouldn't cross. But in the late 80s or very early 90s, it seemed to be that any kind of moral or humanistic approach to it was all but gone.
Everybody get down!
And so we need to do something to try and stop this madness.
Get yourself
Innocent people were being killed and being specifically, purposefully targeted. So I went and met a senior leader in the loyalist UVF, Ulster Volunteer Force. We tried to find a way of reducing conflict on the streets. And from there, we have been involved in most aspects from 92 on through all the peace process.
After 1985, the British and Irish governments came to the conclusion that actually they could not resolve the Northern Ireland problem simply by fighting each other or being in opposite corners, but only through some kind of cooperation. That political deal, when it was signed, became what was called the Belfast Agreement or the Good Friday Agreement.
An agreement that unites loyalist and republican, unionist and nationalist leaders in a wide-ranging historical accord.
The two Prime Ministers emerged just before 6 this evening to inaugurate the historic agreement they hope will usher in a new era for the island.
The principle of consent is absolute and is throughout the agreement. And the breakthrough is that is now accepted by all, North and South. Also, those who believe in a united Ireland can make that case now by persuasion, not violence or threats.
And the Good Friday Agreement was a historic breakthrough. First of all, it was that unionists and nationalists have to be in government together. The second was that violence was absolutely not legitimate for political ends. The third was that the border would only change if there was consent. And the fourth was that we can be British, Irish, or both as we may choose.
The weight of history leans heaviest on our politics and some communities here. Honestly, it's not history, it's still their reality. And I am now at this point looking at the political situation that we're in with Brexit and decisions being made on behalf of Northern Ireland that will really affect here, but without a Northern Irish voice and without that kind of legacy of understanding, of the history and the society here. That's frustrating.
Put the camera down just as we're going down here.
Tim, I know this is a tough state right here. If we get out in the daytime and shoot this, is that going to be a problem?
No, daytime be okay.
Yeah.
Somebody might come over and ask what you're doing.
What's the right answer?
Just tell them.
Yeah.
Say you're doing a documentary looking at both sides of the argument. So this is coming up. This is the gate that's usually open during the day. That would take you through to Shankill Road. Well, it's a safety blanket. People on both sides there, the community organisations talk to each other and they would like to see the roads open. But at the same time, they want to make sure their communities on both sides are protected, so it prevents it escalating, young people from one side going into attacking another side.
We still have sectarianism that we have to address, we have to deal with. It's been there for years and it's compressed into a small area in Northern Ireland, so it runs deep.
The peace wall is in front of us now. These walls were at the very start of the Troubles at the centre. This is 50 years ago there was really serious rioting in these areas, and then they put these walls up, and then after that, when people started throwing missiles and things over the wall, they raised them higher. There are evidences of progress, and there is potential that over time things will change, and at the same time it remains fragile, and we've found that we've kind of gone 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. I think the risk that Brexit poses is that it might be 3 back.
Brexit, guys, most people here, we voted to stay in Europe because none of us wanted this trouble or this border ever raised again. So it's a bit scary to think we're sitting in limbo here, just waiting to see what could happen. Most important thing, guys, we do not want a hard border. Hard border, I believe, could cause trouble here again. If the British Army was brought back on our streets to man the border, I think we'll come under gunfire again from the south, and especially the South Armagh Brigade of the IRA could go back to war. If that happens, then they might drag these guys back into the same type of war again. But, hopefully, will not never ever happen again in this country.
Well, Newry was a border town. You're probably seven odd miles from the border here, maybe less in certain places. You can see here in the distance the mountain. In the 1970s, 80s, and through until ceasefire time, you would have seen watchtowers on those hills. And towards the end of the 1980s, probably one of the greatest challenges was that unemployment was around 28%. And today, we're now sitting at virtually full employment. Probably cross-border retail trade would be worth about 40 million euros to the Newry economy. And I think that's what makes Newry so important, because it's sitting right halfway between Dublin and Belfast, and that's why we have grown over the last 20 years. A hard border would bring infrastructure, security infrastructure. It would also open up the whole issue of smuggling again, which in itself brings criminality, paramilitary activity. With that, potentially could bring violence, and therefore we just gradually find ourselves creeping back to where we were in the 1980s and the 1990s. I suppose that's where our concern is about this whole Brexit process, that we don't go back to the past, that we don't have the infrastructure, that we don't have the barriers on the border. We want to look to the future.
Things are going back and forward over the border all day, every day. And, you know, Guinness gets brewed in Dublin. It gets bottled up here and back down again to be exported. So how can you unpeel that supply chain? It is so complex.
So I say that us going backwards and forwards, this is what we do. We travel to Dublin, the guy come back with all this, and hopefully we'll, whenever they decide to go ahead with Brexit, we'll still be able to do this on a daily basis. One of my concerns on Brexit will be that if the border, if something does happen, and we've got clients in Dublin and in Cork and in Galway, so we've got to drive up and down every week. And what are we going to do if we arrive down and there's queues of thousands of vehicles sitting? I won't be able to earn any money. I won't be able to pay my guys, and we won't be able to function and actually generate income. Every one of these little dots, we have to go to every one of these places. And we're in Belfast, so we have to come across this. We have to break through this border at this point. We're breaking the border at this point, breaking the border at this point, breaking the border at this point.
Small businesses employ more than the whole of the public sector and large businesses put together in Northern Ireland. So we are a small business economy. And one of the reasons we are such a small business economy is because with 40 years of conflict, not a lot of multinationals were interested in coming into this zone.
We have at least 3 fast turnaround projects to the tune of about £7 million that have been ordered verbally in January and February of this year, that should be on site right now, and they're just sitting there in hold. They're in limbo. I don't think anyone's actually come out with it and said, we're putting that on hold till we see how Brexit goes. But if we here as a small business in Mahara are thinking about it, it's every conversation when you go into any social event anywhere, whether it's your pub on a Friday night to the boardroom table, this is the conversation. So if we're talking about it like that, I'm sure the Amazons in America or the Facebooks, they're all talking about their investment.
You know, we talk about stockpiling, we talk about cross-bordering, we talk about backstops, talk about so much. Yes, we can stockpile. We can stockpile timber, we can stockpile bits of it, but you cannot stockpile electrics or glass or component parts that architects and designers specify. You don't see what it is. You have to bring them in from other countries. So it's very difficult.
If we don't get this right, we will go under and it will impact jobs in Northern Ireland. And if you imagine, you know, we talked about this place finally getting some stability, nowhere near the type of stability and growth it deserves and needs. But to take that back, to take the one thing, the economy, to take the economy back is you're not just talking about an economic impact the way you might be talking about for Britain or, for example, a recession in America or whatever. You're talking about a tiny society that has underwent 40 years of hardship and conflict and didn't know normal. And for us to finally get a little economy that's doing well, that we also need to keep pushing, for that to go backwards, it's just unfair. It would just be completely unjust, unfair, and remiss.
Yeah, I mean, Northern Ireland, since I've been living, Northern Ireland's always been a part of Britain. So I've got no really feeling about Northern Ireland, you know, it is what it is. You know, whatever's happened over the years to do with what's gone on, it's gone on. It's out of my control. I don't care, you know, it's one of them things. I care about England, what goes on in this country.
A lot of people that voted in Great Britain wouldn't have been aware or familiar with Northern Ireland issues. And that's why there's the problems that there is, because people who wanted to leave didn't think too much about the fact that there would be a land border and that it was a border on the island of Ireland. And, you know, the implications, Good Friday Agreement, Belfast Agreement, and all the rest of that. So they have to be worked through. One of the fundamentals of that is the principle of consent. So the principle of consent means there will be no change to the position of Northern Ireland unless the majority of people in Northern Ireland agree to that change.
So we voted as a whole UK. That was the terms. But the thing is, for Northern Ireland, there was a majority vote for Remain. And so the idea of consent and consenting to constitutional change, that was the key that unlocked the peace process here. And so changing our constitutional structure against the majority of the people, the will of the people in Northern Ireland, that's actually never been done in the history here. And it's a sadness for that to be done, because I think there will be negative repercussions. It's disrupted what had been a very fragile status quo.
The Good Friday Agreement says that if a majority in Northern Ireland wishes to, and the people of the Republic also agree to it, then Northern Ireland can become part of the Irish Republic. But until Brexit, it looked as though actually people were just coming to the conclusion fighting about the border didn't matter, let's make the current system work. Since Brexit, many people who previously were happy to remain in the United Kingdom, or people who even were British but now feel because of Brexit they no longer identify in the same way with the United Kingdom, have started to consider whether the border should change. And the possibility is, for the very first time, that a majority might exist for Northern Ireland to become part of the Irish Republic.
I was very, very much a leaver for Irish independence. Still am today, but Brexit is just bringing that right on our doorstep once again. As long as we are tied to the aprons of the British government, we will never have peace, we will never have stability, and we will be used, abused in every way. Ireland needs to be free from British control.
Well, I mean, Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom, and that is the case until the people of Northern Ireland choose otherwise, and that's obviously provided for within the Good Friday Agreement. And we all think, for the most part, that now is not the time to start talking about that kind of a question, because what we're focused on now is the fact that Brexit is happening. Northern Ireland will leave with the rest of Great Britain as part of the United Kingdom when Brexit happens. What we want is that it causes as little impact on people's lives in a negative way, and that going forward we can have the best relationship with the UK as a whole, because really that's what we want out of this. I think we've gone through a lot on this island, you know, and we've had, particularly when we talk about relations north and south, quite a difficult past. There is a lot of memories that people have of the Troubles and obviously how damaging that was in terms of relations north and south. But at the same time, we have come a long way, and I think, but there is a huge effort to try and build on the success of the Good Friday Agreement.
This is where my own father was shot dead here. See, just here on the right-hand side. Oh, no, guys, he was sitting in work. He was sitting in his office, and they actually walked in and shot him dead. It's a playground for children now. They come here most years on the 2nd of May, and I stand here for a few minutes and just think of my father. I know he's crazy here, like, but that's where he lost his life. You know, but when I pass here regular, what I normally do, yeah, it hurts. It hurts, guys. There's no longer a member of what they call the Beast Specials here. That was a very strong Protestant force, and they disbanded 1970 guys for that reason. But they didn't shoot my father until 5 years later. You'll never forget. Me personally, I'll never forgive. But my way, guys, I've moved on from it. There's good Catholic people, very good Catholic people, and they did not hurt me. Years ago, as we grew up here as kids, we hated each other. I don't hate the Catholic people anymore. You realise these guys are not your enemy. They've been hurt exactly the same way as me. And the majority of people living here, guys, we want to live in peace. We want to live side by side. And we could live side by side if we were left alone to do so.
Because of my experiences and delving deep into something that I never imagined, I couldn't have imagined if I'd lived a million years, witnessing the pain of conflict up front, witnessing the agony of people, even those who believed what they were doing was right. I will pursue through the ballot box all my political aspirations, but I will never deviate ever from the peaceful way.
Good question. Can I live under an Irish government? I hope I never have to. But if I could live in peace, I would, because I'm not going to leave this part of the world, guys. This is my home. This is my part of the country I live in. I don't want to live under an Irish government, but I might have to. And I honestly believe that if Britain leaves here tomorrow and we become one island, what would be the need for the loyalist paramilitaries to fight a war again? What would we be fighting for? Everybody in this country, guys, we've suffered enough. There's too many people to be killed in this country, too many people killed. Do we really want to go back to war again? You'd have to say no.
Every ounce of my sense, my heart, my soul, deeply, I believe that our future is all of people in Ireland together, because a united country isn't the absence of borders, land borders. A united country is where people in the country feel as one, differ in issues, but feel as one and have an identity. That's what I want. That's my dream. That's my prayer.
I have a tricky name. My name's Connor. And any Connor that meets a Connor, the first question they ask is, one N or two? The reason being is, the very Irish way of spelling it would be C-O-N-O-R, and the more Protestant way of spelling it would be C-O-N-N-O-R, which is the way that my name's spelled. But I met a Connor 2 years ago, and we look at each other, and just literally new introduction in a pub or whatever it was. Oh, hello, Connor, one N or two, he said. And I said, I tell you what, and excuse the language, I know you don't give a shit, and I certainly don't care either, so let's not ask whether you've got one N or two.
Because when you said what you have in terms of loyalism, unionism, their focus is keeping us, no matter what, keeping us part of the United Kingdom, and these guys are making us part of United Ireland. They're those old arguments, those old frictions. And somewhere you've got people like me in the middle that really say, this is about this little place, these 6 counties, however they were manufactured, however somebody scribbled a border on there, 100 years later, there's these 6 counties and 1.8 million people. Let's put them first before you talk about a United Kingdom or a United Ireland.